Hello and welcome to Crimewatch UK. Now, if you've ever worried or complained about crime, this is your chance to do something about it. The police can never solve crime on their own, of course, at least not in a country that demands the sort of liberties that we expect. They can act only on information received. So we're going to ask you to turn amateur detective and help out the professionals. This is about real-life crime, not the stuff of fiction. These are all real police officers. They're all waiting for your call. Everything you see in this programme will be for real or meticulously reconstructed from the facts.
You may find some details disturbing, but they'll only be there if it's necessary evidence that could make all the difference in solving a crime. And if you see anything tonight that jogs your memory, please call us. We hope to see immediate results. The number is 01 if you're outside London, 811 8055.
We start with a case that's chilling. Somewhere, probably in the English Midlands, there's a killer on the loose. And someone must know who he is. The police and a grieving family need your help. As you're about to see, the nature of the killing leads to the fear that he might well strike again. It's a macabre story made even more bizarre by this letter that was sent to the police by a man who claims to be the murderer. Do you recognise the style? It may have been written with a ruler and a mapping pen, and look in particular at those peculiar S's that are written in the form of exclamation marks. It's a bit like some computer shorthand. Now, the letter could be a decoy, it could be a hoax, but if you know who wrote it, you could save someone's life. In the reconstruction that follows, every detail is as exact as we can make it. The real locations and the actual vehicle the killer drove. The outskirts of the village of Keyworth near Nottingham on Halloween last year. Monday, October the 31st. At 9 o'clock in the morning, a body was found by a passer-by. A young girl had been strangled and raped with particular brutality. Colette Aram, a trainee hairdresser, was 16 years old. The previous evening, she'd set out to walk to the home of her boyfriend. She never got there. This bizarre letter was received by the police 2 weeks later. The details in it suggest it's genuine and possibly written by someone with local knowledge.
Is somebody protecting this man?
Superintendent Bob Davey heads the inquiry team. Today, 7 months and 2,000 statements later, they still haven't found the killer. And without your help, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. A man who's white, aged roughly 25 to 35, with probably brown, wavy hair.
So what the hell do we know about him? He's not going to sit in his house with the word murderer written across his chest or across his back, is he? He's got some sort of sexual hang-up. He likes young kids. It's not going to be ever so obvious when you go through the door. But talk to the people, talk to the wives. Let's find him, because he's about somewhere. Colette's left in a field, don't forget that. We're dealing with a savage killing. Let's sniff him out and let's see if we can find him.
The police have built up a picture of the killer's movements from the letter and from corroborating evidence. It starts at a riding stables 5 miles from Keyworth.
I was in a hut for hours waiting for a girl to return from horse riding. No one saw me.
Yet the police are almost certain that the killer hid here while girls were riding near the hut. There are forensic clues, in particular a rag stained with human semen. And at about 4:30, something happened here that was to set off a fateful chain of events.
When the car came with keys, I could not help take it.
The next time the stolen red Fiesta was definitely sighted was shortly after 5 on an estate in Keyworth. The witness, a local resident, noted that the car was probably parked there for about an hour, and they were able to give a description of the driver. Did he visit a friend, Or if he actually lives locally, did he simply go home for tea? Then, early on that Sunday evening, in the hour between 6:20 and 7:20, the suspect is known to have cruised the neighbourhood, trying to pick up young girls. One of them had a very close encounter.
She's exercising the dog at the time. He stops and he makes some pretence of asking her the way to Walls Drive. Now that was clearly a bit of a ruse on his part, because Walls Drive in actual fact was only 50 yards away and he probably just passed it.
Yeah, look, come here. Can you tell me where Walls Drive is, please?
You just come out of it.
Oh yeah. Well, where are you going anyway?
Nowhere.
Do you want a lift?
No.
Oh, come on, it's warm in here, it's dry. I'll take wherever you want to go.
No thanks.
What are you scared of? I'm not going to bite you. Come on. Come on, where do you want to go? I'll take you.
No.
This cruising is the kind of habit that he may well be repeating in other parts of the country. Has anyone tried to pick you up in this way?
No one knows what I look like. That is why you have not got me.
In fact, they do have various descriptions. He was seen yet again at about 8 o'clock by another important and a particularly observant witness.
Yeah. I'm just going to see some mates around there. Won't be long.
When he left the car there, he walked around the corner and then he came back and he made some comment about somebody not being in, as if it was a reference to having visited some house. Well, he couldn't have done that, because in actual fact there was no houses in that vicinity.
The witness's suspicions were already aroused when he noticed what was being carried.
Oh, yeah.
No one knows what the knife was used for, but the witness prudently took a note of the car's registration number. Colette Aram took her last walk up this hill. She left home at 8 o'clock on her way to see her boyfriend just 20 minutes away. What happened then must be speculation. But one further witness, a local resident, did provide a vital piece of information.
I know I strangled her. When a car passed, she would have got me caught. But she was not dead when I left her. Maybe the cold killed her. Cars passed when we were there. I thought she would be all right.
We're talking about Colette probably being abducted and murdered at about 8:15 on that Sunday night. At 9 o'clock that night, there's a man of the description of the man we're looking for, goes into the Generous Britain pub at Costock.
What can I get you?
A pint of orange lemonade, please. And can I have one of those ham cobs as well?
If we accept it's the man that went in the pub, and I think we do, is a man that, if you remember, he drank a pint of orange and lemon. Now that's an unusual drink. It is in our circles. We're pints of bitter men.
Ham, he said. Ham.
Yes, please, yeah.
On holiday, are you?
No, actually, I took the wrong turning off the motorway. No, actually, I've come up to visit a friend who lives in Barton.
Oh, 91p, please.
His stories prove to be false, but they do suggest a degree of local knowledge.
He works in the power station, but he's had a bit of an accident, so I was going to visit him in hospital. Thanks.
Oh, they've gone. Excuse me.
Where's the toilet?
Oh, just back there.
We searched and we checked in the toilets and we took possession of some of the tissues. One of the tissues was sent, in fact, all of them were sent off to the forensic, and they found signs of blood and also human semen.
I go soon, and then you will never get me.
Well, the man who's determined to get him, who's in charge of the case, is Detective Superintendent Bob Daheley. First of all, Superintendent, how much credence do you put in this weird letter?
Well, one's got to be open-minded about letters like this from previous experiences we've had. But there are certain aspects of this letter which make us think that it probably is genuine. That is from the man who murdered Colette.
Now, what about the description of the killer? Obviously, the man we used was an actor, and people mustn't think too much about that description. How much do we know about the killer?
Well, I shouldn't want that to mislead people, but we're looking for someone 25 to 35 years, of average height, probably light brown hair, and we know from a number of witnesses that he was wearing this brown suede or imitation suede three-quarter length coat.
Was he clean-shaven, or did he have a beard? Well, of course, he could grow a beard or cut one off since. Do we know?
Well, that's right. And in fact, a number of witnesses in this case have given varying descriptions. But we want to be open-minded about this, and we feel that at this stage he's probably clean-shaven.
And do you think that somebody out there knows or might know who the killer is, might have a good suspicion?
Well, we think so. We think that the man's got local knowledge. We think he probably lived locally at that time. And we're looking for someone who was away from his home between 4:30 that day when the car was stolen and until about 10 o'clock that night when we know the car was brought back or was seen coming back into Keyworth.
Now, this horrible behaviour that we saw, the cruising around, trying to pick up young girls, he might presumably be doing that somewhere else.
Well, this is a possibility. In fact, this is quite a likely possibility, bearing in mind his behaviour on this night. I mean, we've evidence from witnesses that, in fact, he was following young girls and cruising the area. I would think that that behaviour is probably still continuing.
So, if this happens to any other young girls, you want them to report it, wherever it is they live?
Oh, yes. If anyone's been approached in this way or seen anyone behaving in this manner, if they let us know, we'd be grateful.
Is there anything else that we should know? Have you had any other information?
Well, we've had a lot of information on the case, but there's a woman that rang in. She rang the local evening newspaper and she rang one of our police stations. She was distressed. She was anonymous. She said that she knew who had murdered Colette, and then she broke down and she put the phone down on both occasions.
She knew who the murderer was, and she hasn't rung back?
Well, this is what she said. It may be, of course, that she doesn't know, but she thinks she knows. We'd like that woman to come forward and contact us again. We'll treat whatever she says in confidence.
Right, so you want her to ring in at anybody who thinks that they have suspicions about somebody who might have been in the area at the time, and the description is a fairly broad one.
Yes,
somebody
it is.
between their mid-20s and their mid-30s.
That's right. That's right. And I certainly wouldn't want people to take too much notice of the actor or the descriptions that we've shown.
Right, Superintendent, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
The number to ring is 01 811 8055. If you think you can help in any way, and especially if you think you know who did it, please call now. Don't let what happened to Colette happen to someone else. You can talk openly or in absolute confidence, if you want, to the officers on the case. If you prefer, you can talk to a researcher from the programme. 01 811 8055. Or you can, if you want, call any time to the incident room at Bingham in Nottinghamshire. 0949 38282. Bingham 38282.
Well, now, if you live in a city, the chances are reasonably high that you've been burgled at some time. Well, maybe now you'll recognise some of your possessions. Every force in the United Kingdom has a treasure trove, a sort of Aladdin's cave of what they think is stolen property, but they just can't trace the owners. Well, Crimewatch, with the help of John Bly from the Antiques Roadshow, will now try to put that right. We're starting this month with Devon and Cornwall's collection, but the goods might come from anywhere in the UK, so see if there's anything you once owned in their Aladdin's cave.
Thank you, Sue. Well, the Devon and Cornwall's Aladdin's Cave has the most extraordinary range of things, from the household item to the rare collector's piece. But you know, curiously, rare doesn't automatically mean valuable. For example, this little presentation mace. It's inscribed Cornhill Ward, Right Honourable Nicholas Fowler, Lord Mayor, 1884, which makes it unique, but of no great commercial value to anyone outside the family of Robert Fowler, to whom it could be priceless. So all Fowlers, please take a close look. Now, in contrast, the tea caddy. Now, these little boxes were made to take a specific amount of tea originally. It was called a catty, but of course we were lazy with our language as we are now, and it became corrupted to caddy. And they're now extremely collectible. Nice little boxes like this one particularly, made about 1790, covered in nice sort of foliate marquetry with cross-banding. A very nice little box. They were made in large numbers, and to illustrate what I've just said, they vary slightly. Here's one with a little silver top to identify, a little silver handle. You know, a rather tenuous link now into continuing with silver, we go to what looks like every granny's wedding present, and I'm quite sure every grandma's got one of these. A nice little silver teaspoon set with sugar nips in case, sometimes in red, sometimes in royal blue. Although they were made in their millions, each one of these is identifiable by the fact on the back of each spoon there will be a set of hallmarks, and we can tell from those hallmarks a great deal of information. For example, the crown that you can see there is the Sheffield Assay Office, and the R is the date letter for the year 1884. So we can tell where and when they were made. So it's obviously a very good idea to keep a record of what you've actually got in your home. And you know, the easiest way of doing that is to stand in the middle of your room with a camera and just click all the way around, and then you have a complete contents of your house in camera. Much more unusual and possibly easier to identify are these gaming counters, which come from the 17th century. They're silver coins. You know, in the 17th century, 200 years ago, gaming was extremely popular. And the wealthy people used to carry their own counters. These are identifiable because one of these rare little sets are actually French half-écu coins dated 1643 and 1644. And now to a piece of furniture. And here we have the most superb little example of a little walnut lady's writing table and needlework table. It's got a little bag underneath which slides out. They put the silks and the wools in there, her writing compartment there, and here, best of all, a compartment where a lady or a young girl could keep her secrets, those little indiscretions of the Victorian period. A very good, extremely fine piece of Victorian furniture. And before I sit down again, I'm supposed to tell you that they believe, in fact, my chair has also been stolen. So before anybody pinches it again, I'm going to sit down and say that if you've recognised anything you've seen tonight here, please ring us here on Crimewatch UK.
The number to ring is 01 811 8055. Now, we've already had a large number of calls. One of them, at least, is an important one, we think. We'll let you know what develops as the show goes on. Now to a number of crimes where your help is needed and where we've invited police officers to appeal to you directly for information. Here at the Crimewatch UK Incident Desk are David Hatcher and Helen Phelps.
Hello. We start with a fresh appeal for your help in tracking down the killer of a young nursing student, Aila Karjalainen. On holiday from Finland, she was last seen alive on Sunday, the 7th of August last year. That's when she checked out of the YWCA in London and headed off west, probably hitchhiking. Her body was discovered on the Blenheim estate in Oxfordshire, but her rucksack was found 5 miles away, right beside the A40 at Bernard Gate. Did you travel from Oxford to Witney on that Sunday, August the 7th, or see Isla walking along or maybe waiting for a lift? Note the gold shoes, and the blue socks and the white trousers, and that Finnish flag on her blue rucksack, which when found was light of about £100 in Finnish currency. Now markers are fairly unusual. Were you offered any, or did you see anyone trying to exchange some? A recent clue is this anonymous letter, posted from Oxford in January this year. The writer mentions finding a small purse and a thin, waterproof jacket near where Isla's rucksack was found. Did someone you know come back from an afternoon walk with a new anorak? If you can help with the letter, the markers, the rucksack, or if you recognise Isla, please call us.
And maybe you can help us solve one of the most heartless crimes of the month. This looks like any ordinary transit caravan, but it's probably unique. It's equipped with all the modifications you need for someone in a wheelchair, so that disabled people can share holidays with their families. 8 weeks ago, a young man turned up at the owners in North London, desperate to hire the van to rescue, he said, disabled friends stranded in Cumbria. He drove off on March the 28th and the caravan hasn't been seen since. His chequebook and licence turned out to be stolen. The bus has the number plate HWV 361V, or at least it had. It might have been changed now. We need to hear from anyone who has seen or serviced this van. Please keep a lookout.
Now, are you about to be robbed yourself? Do you remember that audacious Holborn safe deposit job when Lloyd's Bank was broken into over a weekend, when the gang made off with millions of pounds? Well, the City of London police have caught some of the gang, and that, you might think, would be the end of that. Except for these photos which officers came across during the inquiry. These safes and strong rooms are almost certainly targets which are all sussed out and ready to crack. Is yours the next on the hit list? This is the sort of thing you'd find in any retailers dealing with small but valuable goods. Have you worked anywhere where the filing baskets were on top of the chub out the back? Is that where you plugged in the kettle? This one's also a chub, a bit more sophisticated. Do you recognise the panelling? Wherever you are, have a think about the safe where you work. And if you recognise any of these safes, please let us know.
And finally, Thames Valley Police have been appealing for a week for help to trace Mark Tildesley. Last Friday, he cycled to his local fair in Wokingham and was last seen there at 7 o'clock in the evening. He was wearing a cream zip-up jacket with a lion on the back. His gold-coloured chopper bike was found tied to the railings where he would have met his parents. Did you see him? Was he with anyone? And still on the subject of missing children, Lothian and Border Police investigating the murder of 5-year-old Caroline Hogg have been very concerned about the number of suspicious incidents which go unreported. We didn't think it was important enough, is what people usually say when pressed. Please don't think that. The message for parents everywhere is make sure your children know how to say no to strangers.
If you can help with any of the items we've mentioned, please call us here at Crimewatch UK.
And the number to ring is 01811 8055. We'll be waiting for your call. Now, of course, there are some parts of the detective process in which we, the public, can be of very little help. For example, it takes a forensic scientist to discover microscopic clues, and only specialists can match fingerprints. But even then, it almost always depends on us to volunteer the crucial information that will clinch the case.
This fingerprint is a case in point. It could belong to a murderer, but the police need your help if they're to prove it. Mrs. Juliet Rowe, a mother of 2, was killed in Budley Salterton on Monday the 21st of September 1981. It happened at her home, a detached house in Castle Lane called Milford. The murder was particularly clinical. She'd been shot 6 times in the back, head and chest with a .22 automatic pistol. There were no signs of a break-in and nothing was taken. Police are still hoping that motorists on holiday in Devon at the time, driving from the coast and passing Mrs. Rowe's house, may recall seeing something odd. An orangey-red Austin Maxi car, for example, which was seen flashing its lights and speeding away from the scene of the murder along the nearby Woodbury Road. So as far as the public's concerned, it's this red car that could trace the killer. But for the police, this fingerprint is a vital clue. Detective Chief Inspector Pearce, how are you hoping this print might help you with the crime?
Well, during our examination of the property, we found some 400 fingerprints and eventually traced 260 people that had access over a period of time. The fingerprint has been searched nationally by all police forces. It hasn't been eliminated, so could well be the offenders. And we also have it on our own computer system, and it's searched against all newly convicted people. To demonstrate the system, your fingerprints have been obtained, as you know. We've coded them and put them on our computer with many thousands of other people, and also Sergeant Froggatt has examined your desk for fingerprints, and we believe we've got a right thumb. So what he is going to do now, he is going to code that fingerprint and ask the computer to search it, female, everyone over the age of 30 years.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that the numbers or mathematical values he's typed into this piece of 20th century technology have been worked out using a method developed in Victorian times, when modern-day fingerprinting was first discovered. Back in the days of the Raj, the British were finding it difficult to keep track of their many Indian subjects. They all seemed to look the same. Indian prisoners were taking full advantage of the situation by swapping places with their friends at visiting times and serving their sentences on a sort of rota basis, until the value of fingerprints was spotted, that each individual's prints were unique. Edward Henry, a Calcutta policeman, then brought the idea back to Britain and Scotland Yard. Now, dusting techniques using fine particles of aluminium which stick to secretions left by the fingertips are commonplace methods of turning up evidence. Bulky objects like this wine bottle would once have had to be taken away from the scene of the crime to clutter up the forensic lab at the police station. Now they can be left where they are. The powdered prints are simply lifted off with sticky tape. Then all that needs to be taken back to headquarters is the piece of tape transferred to a card. It takes 5 years training to qualify as a fingerprint expert. The system today is still based on Edward Henry's original method. A mathematical value is given to the loops and whirls of each print and a total score arrived at. It's a painstaking methodical process which involves a keen eye and keen eyesight. The next step, the search through the thousands of records of known criminals, can then be narrowed down to those nearest the score of the suspect's print. But with millions of prints on files throughout the country, what is the chance of there being two different individuals with similar prints? Gerald Lambourne, a former commander at Scotland Yard, has made fingerprints his life's work.
I think I better answer that in the same way as I answered the judge in court who asked me the same question. He said, I know you can produce some mathematical formula which proves the possibility of two people having the same fingerprint. He said, but the members of the jury are not mathematicians. You tell them in layman's English what the chances are. So I told them that one person stood more chances of forecasting 8 correct draws every week through one football season.
Each fingerprint can have up to 130 separate characteristics, and under British law, a minimum of 16 must be found to tally before a matching pair is established. This level of proof is one of the highest in the world, and even then it has to be verified by 3 other experts before it can be used as evidence in court. The system has convicted thousands of criminals, though none perhaps quite as celebrated as the great train robbers. The Royal Mail train was bound for London, but never made it. It was hijacked and relieved of £2.5 million in ready notes. A huge police hunt traced the gang's hideout to a deserted farm. The robbers had gone, but the trail was still fresh, and Gerald Lambourne was there.
Well, from a fingerprint point of view, it was like in Aladdin's cave. Fingerprints all over the place. Although there was obviously an attempt by the robbers to wash away their prints, because we found traces of the washing and also the large sponges which were probably used.
So who was the first of the robbers you identified?
A very famous gentleman called Biggs. He was on a game of Monopoly.
8 more of the gang joined Biggs in jail as a result of leaving their fingerprints in incriminating places. That was 20 years ago, but the basic technique has remained the same. Supplemented now, though, by advanced technology like lasers being used experimentally in this country, where prints are particularly tricky to detect. The beam causes proteins left behind in the sweat to fluoresce. But one of the most surprising recent developments is also one of the simplest. It shows up prints on difficult surfaces like metal, another application for superglue.
What we're going to do is now leave that in there. We've got our 2 pads now, impregnated with an alkaline solution. We put them inside. We'll now take our superglue, and what we're going to do is now put the superglue onto the pads and allow them to start fuming. And it's the fumes that will, as we've said, go all over the place. Any print that you leave behind, particularly on a fresh print, there's about 98% that's moisture or water. And what superglue fumes, in fact, do is stick to any of the moisture. So any marks that have been there, particularly on a fresh mark, that have been left by whoever it was that handled that particular weapon. Right, so some time now has elapsed, and let's have a look and see at our knife. Well, there we are. There's our prints on our knife.
Well, the next step in the technological chain is inevitably the computer, like this one here, and its display system, which is to be installed, in fact, at Devon and Cornwall this week. Well, it's now printed out a short list of 10 sets of fingerprints that it says are close matches to mine. Is that right?
That's right. Well, what Sergeant Froggatt is going to do now, he's going to look at the responses from the computer on the digit scan system here and compare them with the right thumb found on your desk.
No, that doesn't match. Ah, now that looks like yours, Sue.
So that's mine?
I'm sure it is, yes. There we go.
Meantime, however, this fingerprint hasn't so far found a match, and Mrs. Rowe's murderer is still at large. It's a long shot, but if you think you can help, perhaps you saw this car, or perhaps you have inside knowledge, you can call us in confidence here on Crimewatch UK on 01 811 8055, or Exeter CID on Exeter 52191. That's 0392, the code for Exeter, 52191.
Now to Britain's, and possibly the world's, biggest ever stamp theft. And there's a £24,000 reward for the person who solves this one. It happened about 2 months ago, in fact on Monday, March the 26th, in the City of London. Thousands of stamps were stolen, including irreplaceable items of postal history and some complete collector's albums.
The stamps had been valued and catalogued by Stanley Gibbons, ready to be flown to South Africa for auction. They were on public display for 2 days. Then the consignment was picked up by the same freight company which Stanley Gibbons has used for the past 12 years to transport stamps to the airport. It was a Monday, March the 26th, and this particular delivery was worth rather more than usual, approximately £250,000. The stamps were locked in 3 green plastic canisters and 2 suitcases like these. It was about 1:20 p.m. when the driver left Stanley Gibbons and drove east down the Strand. After one other routine collection, he arrived, still with the stamps on board, at Adler Street in Whitechapel. Another regular job. By now it was about 1:40 p.m. and he went straight to the first floor office. But the goods weren't ready for collection, so he had a cup of coffee and then left, about 10 minutes after arriving. And the driver is certain that at this point he did check that the back of the van was still locked. Next stop, St Mary Axe in the City of London. He parked outside the Baltic Exchange, just beyond number 24, where he was due at 2 o'clock. He was a few minutes early. Were you in St Mary Axe at around 2 o'clock on Monday the 26th of March, while the van was unattended? Do you use this bank or cash point? And if so, do you recall seeing this blue van or anyone or any vehicle near it? Because by 2:05, the van had been opened and £250,000 worth of stamps had gone. Well, Detective Chief Inspector Alan Goodman is in charge of investigations at Bishopsgate Police Station. How sure are you now that the stamps were stolen in St Mary Axe?
We're satisfied that the theft actually occurred in St Mary Axe. We're obviously keen to talk to anybody who may have seen something, particularly people who may have attacked the back of the van and perhaps got into it and taken the canisters out of the vehicle. We're also interested in trying to see whether anybody may have noticed another vehicle that may have followed the van from Stanley Gibbons down to the city.
Now, what about those canisters and the stamps themselves?
Yes, well, I have one in the studio with us tonight, and we haven't found any of the 3 canisters, so this is identical to those that were stolen. We'd be interested to hear from anybody who may have seen these laying about anywhere at all, and obviously any information we would treat in the strictest confidence.
And the stamps, some of them were very rare indeed, weren't they?
Yes, some of them were. We have, in fact, a tuppenny blue. There's a pair of tuppenny blues, and they are worth in the region of £7,500. There are others that aren't quite as valuable, but still would attract interest, particularly from dealers or collectors. And again, we'd be interested to hear from anybody who may have been offered these, particularly at a cheaper price.
Right, so stamp collectors who might have received anything from this particular catalogue recently, please let us know.
The number to ring, 01811 8055. We'll be waiting for your call. And I can tell you now about some of the calls we've had so far. We've had one genuinely dramatic call about the Colette Aram killing. Now, we mustn't be too optimistic about these things, but the police are following an entirely new line of inquiry there. We've had some other genuinely important calls, and please don't give up if you find that the lines are engaged. We're having a huge volume of calls. If you're ringing about the Colette Aram murder, you can ring directly to Nottingham. The Bingham number is 0949 38282. 0949 38282. Please do keep trying. Well, now something you can do not so much to help the police as to help yourself. If you own a car, you assume its registration number is unique. And so did the owner of this one. It isn't. One of these cars, the one on the left, is stolen property. Is yours? Well, to make sure you're not in possession of stolen property, take a note of these 4 numbers. G7319704, G3734056, B3775795, H2174214. Now, if any of these numbers appears on your logbook, then it's a forgery. This is the logbook, the vehicle registration document from one of those white Ford Escorts, the stolen one we showed you.
And even if your document isn't one of these forgeries, it and your car could still be stolen. But there are various ways to reassure yourself. For example, if you've got a torch, you could go and check now. Look under the bonnet for the engine and the chassis numbers. Each of them will have a plate like this, or an engraving like this. They should be the same as the 4 numbers on your documents.
If you do have a stolen car, remember the Swansea computer is going to catch up with you in time, so the sooner you find out, the more chance you have of doing something about it, maybe getting your money back. The Stolen Vehicle branch of the Metropolitan Police has compiled a checklist especially for the programme. This is it, it's free. Just send us a stamped, addressed envelope, but you must remember that, to Crimewatch UK, TV Centre, London, W12 8QT.
And a final reminder of the number 01811 8055. In fact, the lines are going to remain open from now until midnight, so if there's any way in which you might help, particularly if you know anything that could prevent a crime, any crime, please do call us. Everything is in strictest confidence unless you say otherwise.
I can tell you we have had some very important calls, at least 15 or 20 just on that bus for the disabled. We'll be back before BBC One goes off the air tonight to tell you what the response has been by then. If you'll have gone to sleep by then, well, join us again, please, next month. If you are staying up tonight, we'll be back at about 11:45. Meanwhile, don't have nightmares. Serious crime is, mercifully, rather rare. We need you to help make it even more so. 01811 8055. Until midnight, we'll be waiting for your call. Good night.